Hello, Em.
Tracy, nice to see you again. Are we here for another Books at Lunchtime? I feel we might be.
I feel we might be. Yes, isn't it good fun?
Excellent.
What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk more about translated books, please, because we were talking the other day about some from Asia, and I know that we've both been enjoying various books from Europe that have been translated, and they'll be more familiar to a lot of people. So let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Yep. What have you got to talk about?
Right, well, should we start off with France? Because I've got two on the top of my pile that are from France.
Yep.
I'll start off with this one. This is not a new book. This actually, I think was originally published in 2006, 2007. I'm not sure when it was translated. If you have a copy of the Kett's book, and if you haven't, shout. But a lot of people in Wyndham will have had this through their letterbox. You'll notice that this is one of the titles that's in this catalogue, and it's recommended by one of our volunteers, Chris, and I'm reading it at the moment, and I have to say it's very enjoyable. It's a story of a very wealthy apartment building on the left bank, I think, does it say? The left bank of Paris. And it's full of people who are various degrees of self-important. And there's a concierge there who just keeps herself under the radar and just does her own thing. But the secret that she has is that she's probably better educated and cultured than anybody in the apartment building. So it's this really interesting, right off the bat, it's quite an interesting situation that we find ourselves in. And there's also in this apartment building a 12-year-old girl who is also extremely smart, but she's also decided she doesn't want to follow her family down this route of their sort of bourgeois life. And she's planning to commit suicide on her 13th birthday. So far, so gloomy. However, in the interim, there is another death in the building, and this starts to have sort of ramifications through the rest of the story. And it's really interesting. It's a bit of a slow burn, but it's been extremely well received, and it's been lauded with all kinds of accolades since it's been published. And it's a testament to how good it is that we're still selling it now, and we're still talking about it now, this passage of time later.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I know that customers have appreciated being introduced to it. When customers who missed it the first time round, it's been very popular all of a sudden here.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
The next one, I think we both are quite keen to talk about these books, aren't we? You've got the whole stack of them. So Antoine Laurain is the master of the short book. You may know him from The President's Hat and The Red Notebook. And he delights, doesn't he, in making inanimate objects part of his stories.
Yes. Yes. So the President's Hat has been the most popular, and that is about the man who's got a bit of an empty life, who finds himself with President Mitterrand's hat and puts it on, and suddenly feels like his life has changed. Whether that's because of his behavior or actually the effects of the hat, we'll never know. But then he loses the hat, so his life has changed again. But the hat goes on to another person. The others don't know who the hat belongs to, but the hat travels and changes a number of lives. So that was how we found out about Antoine Laurain, really. Then we had The Red Notebook, which has been very popular, about a lost notebook. Smoking Kills, complete turn. A man, smoking ban comes in, and he's very unhappy because he really enjoys his cigarettes. And so he starts killing people because he's so unhappy. So, bit odd. A lost cassette tape in French Rhapsody. And now in the reader's room, there's a manuscript turns up in a publishing house, I believe. And yes, and everyone is convinced it's the next big thing, but they don't know who wrote it. So they are very excited about this book and the mystery around it, but then murders start happening around Paris, which echo what's in the book. So they need to track down the author and they need to find the perpetrator of the crimes. So, but I'm expecting much more of the dry, subtle, very human effect that we had in the other books. And they've always been very popular. And as you say, short.
Yeah.
I've got a French one before you move on, or did you have any more French ones? I've got The Mystery of Henri Pic. I don't know very much about this. I think it has, it's similar in subject to the one I just talked about. This is about an unassuming French town with an obscure library where manuscripts kind of go to retire, unpublished manuscripts, and someone visits the library and finds a manuscript which should have been published, and it's going to change everyone's life. This is meant to be so ridiculously French that it starts smoking gitans while you read it. So they say. The reason this is interesting, and this takes us into Italy, is, and I've got the second life of Inspector Canessa. You can see a similarity here. As these are both from a series of books called Walter Presents. And Walter Presents is a streaming service on the television on all four. And Walter chooses world drama and brings it for free to people who want to be exposed to foreign language television. And he's done so well with it that Pushkin, who have a name for bringing foreign language books to the UK, that's what they specialize in, they have now given him his own imprint. So Walter Presents is his selection now of books to accompany the television. So
that's really exciting.
That is really exciting. I expect to spend more time in front of the television because of that. So
I'm sure you could make some educational argument for why in that case.
Could, yes. Culture, it's culturalization.
Let's please talk about Tonke Dragt.
I love talking about Tonke Dragt. I've got two too.
Yes. So Tonke Dragt is, I love this. I mean, this isn't even the story of the book, but I love the story of this. This is, so these are Dutch. So Tonke Dragt was Dutch. And we found out only yesterday or the other day, didn't we, Tracy, that actually she was born in Jakarta. So she's not even Dutch. She's just naturalized Dutch. In any case, in the Netherlands, these are classics. These are very well known, and they've only recently been translated into English, which I find astonishing, but also wonderful. Just proof that, you know, you never know what you're going to uncover. So this is the first of two, or is it three? Is it two or three in this series?
There are two of those. So the second is The Secrets of the Wildwood.
So the story is our protagonist is training to be a knight, and it's set in a wonderful world of, it's kind of an unnamed kind of medievalish kind of wooded landscape. We're not talking elves and magic, we're talking just of yore. So there's something quite magical about it anyway. If you can imagine those forested sweeps of Europe centuries ago, that's what we're talking about. And in order to complete his final training, he has to just stay quiet for a bit. But unfortunately, fate intervenes, and he answers the door one night to find a direction that he has to get a letter to, and not to give it away or anything, the king. He has to get a letter to the king. And so he embarks on this astonishing journey across the landscape. And but you know this is going to be a good book because it starts at the front with a map. And in my experience, books with maps usually bode pretty well. Yes, so this is the first book. And as you say, Tracy, the second one is there also.
Yes. And didn't you tell me when they were first translated that into English that there were page-long reviews in The Guardian?
Yeah. Well, people were just astonished that it had taken this long to find it and to translate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is why I think you and I are quite passionate about finding these books in translation, because it's often no nothing to say about their quality or their importance or their influence, that they haven't been available to us. Sometimes it's just the fates seem to have just skipped them over for some reason. So yeah, I find it amazing. But you're right. I mean, I'm just looking at the inner page here, and actually it was copyright 1962, and it's the first published by Pushkin Children's Books in 2013. So the English translation was 2013. So I find that wonderfully magical. Yeah. Maybe they were in that drawer from in Harold Pick. Maybe that's where it's been all this time.
Yeah, maybe. And Tonke is a woman, Tonke Dragt, and she's got a new one. Which seems, so we've not read this because it is new, but it seems that it's going to follow the same themes of adventure, ending up in dungeons, escapades, dangers, castles, sailings across oceans, falling in and out of love, becoming kings by mistake, etc. So these are really good fun for youngsters, but I think they're perfect for adults to read to youngsters over a series of nights, because they get so much out of them as well.
I mean, that's something we should say about both of these is they sit in our young adults part of the bookshop. So technically they do fill the same sort of space on a bookshelf as The Hobbit might. Yeah, but I think I have no qualms of reading this myself or giving this to adult friends, as well as giving it to very keen, 10, 11, 12-year-olds.
There's nothing in the content that is dangerous for even a 6-year-old to sit in on, but it's not designed for a 6-year-old.
No.
Right, yes. Okay. Moving across Europe.
Oh yes, shall I? Okay. Well, I've got one here. This is Scandi crime. So of course we have to pick up. We've got a few offerings from Scandinavia. So this is Camilla Lackberg, and she is a very well-known sort of Scandi noir writer. And this is her latest one here, The Ice Princess, and it's not light. We were talking earlier about the Japanese, or the other day when we were doing the translation things, we were talking about the Japanese crime books being a little bit more Dorothy L. Sayers and a bit campy. These ones are much more, as you might expect from the Scandi crime things you see on the TV. They're a bit darker. So here, a woman returns to her hometown and finds that her childhood friend has I'm just having to read the back here because I haven't read it yet. It's on my list. She finds her childhood friend dead, slashed wrists in an apparent suicide, but it becomes apparent quite quickly that there's more to the case than meets the eye, and it starts to uncover this really seedy underbelly of the town that they're living in. So it's, if you're into the bridge and you're into those sorts of TV shows that are a little bit more suspenseful and gritty, this might be the one for you.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that. I know that a lot of people do enjoy the Scandi crime noir, and there are lots of authors writing kind of in that vein. But Camilla Lackberg is one that we particularly picked up on because David went up there. David's one of our volunteers, and while he was there, he started reading that, so he's come back raving, and we're picking up on his recommendation.
Okay, what have you got, Tracy?
Well, I've got a kind of a crossover. I'm going to do this with both hands.
You're going to need both hands.
I've got a really big book called The Eighth Life. So this is translated from the German, but it's about the Russian Empire. It is the winner of the English Pen Award. It is 934 pages long. It was published in hardback earlier, so if you really wanted a doorstop of a book,
wow, that would be nice.
Larger editions are available. The font is small, I would say that. So if you have trouble with your eyesight, you might want to either go get your prescription renewed first, or get hold of a magnifying glass. It is so I've talked to Rachel, who I will mention again in a minute, and she said that it's very good. It's not War and Peace. It's not a classic, but it is interesting. It's about on the edge of the Russian Empire, a family prospers thanks to a recipe for hot chocolate that bewitches its drinkers. So then it goes through generations as families struggle, thrive, divide, compete with each other, and so on, all through the 20th century, based around this hot chocolate recipe. So that is The Eighth Life, and it does have a gorgeous cover. And speaking of Rachel, so Rachel Ward is a translator who lives in Wyndham. And amongst other works, we've got some children's books that she translated, but she translates the Simone Buchholz books. Now, Simone Buchholz came to Norwich last year. I've read these. I found them, I really enjoyed them. They're different to anything else I've read. The pace is just a bit odd. Most crime books, you get a police officer or a detective who is socially awkward or a bit difficult to get along with, and that is the case in these as well. So the character's name is Chastity Riley, but she is German. They're set in Berlin, and I have two here. I think that the fourth is just being published. And it's really interesting to follow Rachel Ward on Follow Translate on Facebook, because she'll sometimes put a German phrase on and say, how would we say this in English if we're trying to get this point across? Because we don't have a direct translation. And to see the language discussion open up in the act, and to think about the implications of, if we say this, it's going to give a suggestion of that, and that's not what the author meant, is really fascinating. And she is a customer and a friend of the shop, so I do really recommend these. And I also have, going back to Scandinavia, I Had to Cook a Bear. Now, this will come out in paperback in the new year, but I hugely enjoyed this, and I think it is worth being in hardback. Some books aren't. It is £18.99, but if you're looking for a book that someone's unlikely to have read as a gift, so this is set in 1852 in northern Sweden, where it's getting right up into the Arctic Circle. It's about a young Sami boy who has been rescued from destitution, abuse. There's still a lot of prejudice and racism against the Samis, and the Swedish revivalist, who is an actual historical theatre, Lars Levi Lestadius, he is bringing temperance and literacy to the region, but the people don't like it. They really like their alcohol. That's what gets them through the winters. And there is a murder. A milkmaid is murdered, and it's very easy to blame Sami, the Sami boy who the preacher has taken under his wing. But actually it ends up being a question about whether they were almost better off before they were enlightened. And so what is the actual evil? Where does the actual evil come from? And I love the scene where the preacher goes out with his fork to dig up potatoes, because he'd been given a potato and then he planted it, and now it's time to dig it up. And he's so, it's just such a tender moment. And then he takes it in and he cooks it, and he sits with his wife, and they have a real memorable moment, and they sit and they reflect on how it tastes, and they talk. It's a really nice read. It's got lots of natural history in it. It's got kind of, they go through and look at the way the leaves were pressed as they walk through to pick up clues. So it's got a bit of Sherlock Holmes, it's got a bit of Where the Crawdads Sing, and a bit of To Kill a Mockingbird, actually. And I loved it, and people should read it.
It sounds like a really nice Christmas present if people are getting into that realm of thinking now as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Something really unusual and sort of substantial.
Unusual, substantial. They won't have read anything like it. I can guarantee that. I'm going to go back to running the shop.
Sounds like a really good idea.
Because we've got all these books, and that's why we're doing these, because we're trying to make sure that people are aware of these books. So even though the door is locked, because it's locked down still, we want people to be aware of what other options there are. The very last thing we want is for people to be stuck buying books that they're already aware of, because there's so much more to discover.
Yeah. Yeah.
So excellent. Well, thank you for joining me again. It's been really good to hear about your selections. Right. Okay. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.